couple of days ago, there were a lot of articles talking about how Donald Trump invited Nick Fuentes into the sanctity of his own home, the place where the FBI once used to thread. And of course, there was a lot of conflicting narratives, and I waited for a couple of days because in situations like this, it's important to not rush and talk about the story as more events unfold. So I'm going to try my best to present both sides of the argument, because while this is a he said, she said type of story, there are many events that both sides agree on, and we can focus on those. So, Donald Trump invited Kanye West at his Mar-a-Lago home, who, according to Donald Trump, happens to be black, and has been decimated in his business and virtually everything else, and who has always been good to me by allowing his request for a meeting at Mar-a-Lago alone so that I can give him very much needed advice. He then shows up with 3 people, 2 of which I didn't know, the other a political person who I haven't seen in years, and I told him, don't run for office. A total waste of time. Can't win. Fake news went crazy. So, apparently, much of the concern that I have seen people on Twitter have is mainly directed towards the individual called Nick Fuentes, which the media calls a white nationalist. Now, I don't know how Nick Fuentes describes himself. I believe it's a Catholic reactionary. His views are a little bit controversial. Has got him super canceled from many places, including banks seizing his assets. I don't know how that story ended up, if he managed to access them again or not, but suffice to say, he was there. So now the media is trying to suggest that Trump and Nick Fuentes are buddy-buddies, that they get along fine. And this is also due to the fact that one person who allegedly was at the dinner says that Trump was charmed by Nick Fuentes. Now, Trump himself claims that he didn't know the man, so he doesn't know his political ideology. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't charmed. I mean, Nick Fuentes, even if you disagree with his ideology or you don't like him as a person, he does have a significant following. Like, he has a lot of people that are watching him, and he is doing this outside of the traditional online sphere. Like, he's not streaming on YouTube, he's streaming on alternative platforms, and yet he still manages to gather a significant crowd. Then the numbers speak out that he may very well be a very charming person. Especially if he doesn't talk about the controversial politics and you only have 1 hour with him at a dinner table, then yeah, you may find the person to be quite charming. I'm pretty sure that there are certain politicians that I disagree with and I don't like, that if I were to spend time with them and we don't talk about politics or we talk about finances or whatnot, I may very well find them to be very charming individuals. Like, for example, there was a feminist that I once knew, which was a university professor. Disagreed with her on almost every single issue, but she was a very charming lady. We played Dungeons and Dragons together. She was very nice. So, I don't see how this would contradict anything. Like, yes, Donald Trump could very well not have known who Nick Fuentes is, can very well not agree with his political stances on many issues, and still find him charming. But, of course, you know, the media is not going to allow for this interpretation. Another individual that was there was Milo Yiannopoulos, whom I find very interesting because 2 years ago, the mainstream media would have freaked out about him the most. I mean, all the articles would have focused on him rather than on Nick. But what I think happened is that there were a couple of controversies, a couple of accusations that came up from Lawrence Southern against Milo. And the media knows that because of these accusations, he has fallen from the graces of the right wing. So all of a sudden, despite the fact that he probably holds the same political ideologies, despite the fact that he's still the same person, because they know that he doesn't have the same pull that he once did, they just barely mention him. They're like, oh yeah, well, he was there as well. And he seems to be the right hand of Ye. So given the individuals that he is surrounding himself with, I do believe that Kanye is going to have a very interesting campaign. First of all, the reason he went to Mar-a-Lago, it seems, was to ask Donald Trump to be his vice president. I mean, can you imagine, you know, someone with the ego of Trump, to have Kanye West go up to him and like, oh, so the reason I'm here is because I want you to be my vice president. Like, surely this is something that Milo might have suggested. I can definitely view that. And all of this was to create this media circus, because now everyone knows about the fact that Kanye is running. They know who the people he is running with, and also managed to make Donald Trump look bad. His aides have said that this is a disaster. So just with one visit, Kanye West managed to put himself out there. All the mainstream media is talking about him. He managed to put Donald Trump in PR damage mode. And we're going to notice more interesting things to come, especially as Twitter is now owned by Elon Musk and you have a lot more freedom of speech there. But I assume that the mainstream media themselves are going to side with Kanye, because I do foresee that Kanye is going to focus more on attacking Donald Trump rather than attacking the left. And this will be egged on by the media. Whenever he attacks Trump, he's going to get many headlines. He's going to appear everywhere. And when he talks about other issues or attacks the left, probably very little coverage. So the media is going to run that game. And it changes the dynamics of the GOP, because up until now, especially 1 or 2 years ago, Donald Trump seemed to be as the only candidate. It seemed to be like no one is going to be able to run against him. Now there are rumors of DeSantis being interested in running against him, and you also have Kanye, which is going to run. I am definitely interested to see how the mainstream media will have to deal with this, because again, on one hand, they do not appreciate Nick Fuentes. They do not like Kanye West, as we saw up until now. With Milo Yiannopoulos, they seem to be a little bit more permissive. But they're going to have to now swallow their pride and have to give positive coverage whenever Kanye goes after Trump. Like, you will see this happening. You will see it in CNN. You will see it in NBC News. This also happened in the previous election when Trump ran against Hillary. They thought that Trump is such a ridiculous buffoon that there is no way he could win. So out of all the GOP, they wanted Trump to go against Hillary so that he loses. And you will notice how they held to the grab her by the pussy tape. They held on to that until after he won the primary and he went to fight against Hillary. But up until that point, they were siding with Trump constantly. Like the mainstream media, whenever Trump was saying something about Ted Cruz or whenever he was saying something against another right-winger, they would side with Trump because, I mean, he's entertaining. He did wrestling. You know, he's a funny guy. He's a celebrity. Once he started running against the actual candidate, against Hillary, then the mainstream media went into full damage mode. And I think we're going to notice the same here. I think the mainstream media is definitely going to side with Kanye. I think that they're going to stop talking about the people Kanye is surrounding himself with, put them in the background. And whenever he says something about DeSantis, whenever he says something about Trump, that's going to be the headline, that they're going to cover that. And of course, if the miracle happens, in the unlikely event that the mainstream media did such a great job and fantastic job, and the organizers around Kanye managed to knock on doors and convince people, and by some miracle he wins the primary, then the media will be like, oh, but do you know who he surrounds himself with? Do you know what these people stand for? Oh, let's start quoting. And they're going to go into Milo Yiannopoulos' podcast, and they're going to pull up the Nick Fuentes TikTok videos, and that's how the game is played. But it's going to be an interesting primary. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.